live. All right, welcome to everyone to the Coaching to Flourish podcast. And I'm your host, Raj Anderson, Executive Life Coach and Coach Assessor. And I'm here again, excited with John Andrew Williams, founder of Coach Training EDU. How are you doing, John?
Good. Thank you, Raj. It's good to be here. It's good to see you. Looking lovely and color coordinated, and
We matched today.
look at
We were
us.
just talking about John's shirt, weren't we, John?
Get it. We were in the the providence. They call it the providence, like the way it came to you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
When you're looking at art. Anyway,
So what's been happening in your world? What's happening in the coaching world, John?
what is happening in the coaching world? I think that's a good question. What's happening in my world is I've been running a personal experiment to see if I can stay away from all infinite scrolls for a period of time, like no social media, no YouTube, no news, like no infinite scroll distraction. And I know that this is not a sustainable thing. I know that I'm going to have to get into it, especially getting into social media again and looking at all these other things. But at least for a couple weeks, I've been doing this.
Wow.
And so in one sense, I feel like I've basically put up blinders, and I'm just grinding at the front of me. And what I've realized, and what I've experienced now, is there's so much mental clarity, in the sense that I don't have like it's almost like I'm having like surprise. I don't have a lot of surprises like in this space. Like, the surprise level has gone way down, and so it just feels like a lot more quiet. If that makes sense. But yeah, that's what's going on. So like, what's going on in the coaching world? I've given myself 3 or 4 weeks not to know. So that's what's happening in my coaching world. And it's amazing. I mean, I feel like, a lot of people talk about like doing a dopamine cleanse, even checking, I have to check email, I have to check Slack, I have to check certain things that need to happen. So it's not like I'm completely out, but there's a stopping point. There's not let me get into it. And then there's like 15, 20, 30 minutes later, then you pick your head up and they go, whoa, okay, what happened? Yeah, I haven't done that.
Wow. That's phenomenal, really. I mean, why do you think people do scroll? You said infinitely scroll. I'm just curious about that.
For me, a lot of people I work with, a lot of it, it's not a bad strategy. If you look at the neuroscience behind it, there is an urge to distract. And if you look at our limbic system, the more ancient system of our brain, it goes in the sense of it just feels like safety. Like you can distract yourself away from the stress or the thing that's stressing us out. And then that distraction, our brains learn to crave it because we, in that moment, lessen the painful feelings of sitting with whatever challenge is at hand. So our cortex goes, okay, cool. Like limbic brain, you're happy with this. Like, all right, like I'm game. Like I'll play along and, give you, we have like a lot happy, like a little bit happy, a lot sad, a little bit sad. And like all of these algorithms, everything, if you look at what's happening in social media, is aimed at getting you hooked. It's aimed at getting you, small surprises, both good and bad. So anytime we're scrolling, that's what it's lighting up that system. So the whole brain becomes oriented towards like craving distraction. And that comes at a cost. And so when something comes up that's unpleasant to sit with, one strategy that will lessen the discomfort is to get lost in it, rabbit holes. So I've been really disciplined about sitting in it, the discomfort of whatever it is. and allowing myself to stare out the window. Like that's allowed. Window staring is allowed. And sometimes I'll do that, for 5, 10, 15 minutes. But when I'm done, I don't come back tired. I don't have to come back with more stuff to process. It's like I've come back, like my processor has been cleansed, and that's been lovely. So part of me thinks like, oh my goodness, what if I keep doing it? And I talked to a participant, coach training ED participant. I'll remember her name in a minute here. Well, I'll have to ask her first, but I was talking to her, and she said she's been doing it for a year and 2 months, and it was like, yeah, I'm just like, baby, I'm doing it for weeks, and here she is doing it almost for 2 years. And she said she's like, yeah, you won't go back. She's like, here, you're hooked onto the clean, the clean plate kind of thing. Yeah, so we'll see. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I'm just rambling on this stuff, but I mean, this is something I'm really curious about. I know it's not sustainable. Part of me is thinking, okay, so how do I do this with like getting into social? I know that there are tools that can gather like your feeds, and like you can see like, very specific feeds. So there's more of a mindfulness approach to, to this. But I mean, so that's the space I'm playing with right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I do turn off my emails at the weekend. So I just go into the settings on my phone, and I don't have I'm not on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that either. So yeah, it's interesting what you learn about yourself. I think this connects quite nicely to one of the questions I have for you, John. Yeah, let's shift gears. So this is coming from a coach. How can I help my clients realize their self-induced obstacles?
How can you help clients realize that they have self-induced obstacles? All right, I'll play. The first place to go is really go empathetic, curious listening, like always, right? You go empathetic, curious on it. And as a coach yourself, to remove the good, bad judgment that you yourself are putting on the obstacle. Doesn't mean that the obstacle is good or useful or doesn't need to be, it's better that it's there. But just temporarily, like even just for 2 or 3 minutes as a coach, to mindfully say, okay, I'm not going to judge this. And then get curious about it. Like, so why is the obstacle here? What's the usefulness of the obstacle? What, being distracted. They're distracted. I'm on a Facebook Live. You hear them. Their giggles. Yeah. The distraction. What's the usefulness of the distraction, right? So you get into it and you get curious about it. And then once that curiosity happens, what I've found is that usually people or participants are doing, clients, they're putting the obstacles there for a reason. And as a coach, you don't want to take the obstacle away without first like grabbing the opportunity to explore, why is that obstacle here? Like even if we go back to infinite scroll, so for a period of time, like all these things, or you look at students and you look at the like psychology of success and, how people guard against, that harsh inner critic, because like, let's say that, they have a test coming up and they will, students often, they won't like pour absolutely 100% of everything they could possibly do because, it's hard. B, it's really useful to have an excuse to say, oh, why you didn't do well, and say, oh, in the future, I will do this differently. And if I did this, then I'll get that grade. So it's almost like we create these self obstacles to be lovely excuses to keep ourselves safe. Anytime you're coaching in this realm, you are playing with inner narratives. You're playing with ideas of worth, ideas of, this is the narrative, this is the story, these are the truths I held, these are the truths that I hold to be, correct about me. This is sacred ground. It's so when you're in this space and you're approaching it with curiosity and the reverence that it requires, not necessarily requires, is like the reverence that uh, it's inviting you to have, then your questions, you're going to change. You're going to change this client's life. You are going to change their life if you approach this from that perspective and stay open and curious. And then, after the, 10, 20, 30 minutes, you can go back to your judgment brain and say, absolutely not. This obstacle is here. You're putting this obstacle here and you're in your way. Why? That's like, last last step. If none of that works or, none of that breaks through or makes sense, you just got to say directly what you think, ask why, or, what do you want to do with it? And then go from there. But always addressing it directly, if you can't shake it as a coach, is a really useful thing. But you also make sure you just hold that container of curiosity. And once you say it, release outcome to which direction your client wants to go in.
Because often they might not realize the stories that they're telling themselves or the beliefs that they hold. Or maybe there is a story or belief that they would like to hold, yet there is incongruence or inaction. So there's misalignment. So how do you pull that out or hold the mirror out to incongruence, John?
That's a great question. I've listened to a lot of coaching, like, as you have, Raj. We've talked about this, how it feels like when there's an incongruent client, it had their, and by incongruent, like, they'll say something, but what they're saying it feels like it's a mismatch for what's true in their life or like the energy with which they're saying it. So just like, let's define incongruence, right? And then if we go from there, incongruent clients, they have a tendency to invite the coach to also be incongruent by asking questions about the stuff that that feels like air, or feels like, it's like coaching that doesn't make sense. The whole thing just feels like a cloudy, muddy mess. Like, what? You know what I'm talking about. And then I've also heard it the other way, where there's an incongruent client, but the coach is congruent, and the coach is able to cut through the incongruence, almost use the incongruence for the next coaching question. And then one of two things happen. The client either digs in more in the incongruence and says, starts defending and feeling like, oh no, this is the way it is. But in that defense, there's often, if the coach is congruent, the clients will also push themselves towards congruence. They usually clarify, they figure out, oh no, this is really it, and this is why. It changes the landscape. If the coach if the coach can stay in a space of groundedness, clarity, confidence in the process, they can move clients to congruence. And then I've heard a congruent client and an incongruent coach. Those are fascinating. Those sessions are unbelievable to me. And this is where I feel like a congruent client can make a coach really, really good. If clients have a deep inner awareness and know how to use know how to use a coaching session because they've been coached before, how to take advantage of it, even if the question doesn't land perfectly, to take some part of the question and run with it. I've heard those sessions too. I feel like I want to go back and get examples of these. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, here's the clip and this is how, like, oh my goodness. But I've heard those. And then when both the coach and client are congruent, it's amazing. Like, it just feels like the coaching can get really powerful very quickly. And it's a joy to hear. It really is. It's like, I feel like, it's really moving people on the edge of their awareness, human awareness.
Thank you, John. So I've got another question for you. and this is from not a coach, but from an individual. Can coaching help me identify skill gaps that are preventing me from achieving my goals?
Yes. Yeah. What do you think, Raj?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would add to that, furthermore, it would help you to identify kind of gaps in mindset, behaviors, habit, belief systems. We're just talking about it right now, aren't we? And to add to that as well, I think for me, coaching has been phenomenal in actually recognizing what my skills and strengths are and how to utilize them.
Yeah. 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 I think, when you look at using coaching to really figure out like who am I and when am I at my most compelling self, these are amazing questions. And I think, I've often played with the idea of putting together or attending a leadership program or going more in asking these questions, like, because it's always about gathering, useful feedback, putting yourself out there, rinse and repeat. I, I've, I am convinced that there is, it's not even that, like, it's fulfilling to be connected to a movement of more awareness and kindness and empathy and active listening and knowing, like, there is data, like we know, if you're wanting to be a good coach, like these are the skill sets that you need and we can measure that. That's amazing. And the same thing, when people are doing any skill set in their life, or they're trying to accomplish something, there's probably data sets or skill sets or roadmaps available that that you can gather and then say, okay, how do I interact with this? How can I, what do I like about this? And then gather feedback on, like, when other people find you most compelling. We're living in a world now where the resources are so rich. It's like you just got to just press the search button and then search, and like almost like feedback button, like press the search button, press the feedback button. What I mean by that is trying to figure out what is the mechanism in your life that you're gathering feedback. Oftentimes, and when you look at, things as feedback, oftentimes, like, it changes the perspective on everything. So, like, what if instead of looking at your financial numbers as a measure of worth, what if financial numbers became feedback? And how would you want your financial, like, feedback on what? Like, how would you want to approach your financial numbers? Or if you're working with students, uh, grades, how can you use grades as feedback, not a judgment? We spent a whole one of 24 chapters on, in the academic life coaching program just on that, because all of us who've gone through traditional school have been so conditioned to look at external feedback as a measurement of worth and then to compare that with everyone else. It's human. It's limbic system all the way. And then the cortex has a party too with it. But if you can mindfully start unpacking this stuff and then asking, okay, how do I want to reorganize my inner world to most effectively work with this outer feedback? That's what coaching allows you to do. That's one reason why coaching is so powerful and successful in what it does.
Any coach can help you to even reflect and give yourself feedback in the moment, can't they? Through a learning question, for example.
Yeah. It's amazing. I feel like it just helps that inner world so much. It's our processing speed, our processing. I feel like human processors are maxed out right now. Like the clients I work with, people I listen to, everyone's maxed. It's wild. What coaching does is it helps you, like, process what you need to process so you can make better decisions.
So how can we seek feedback from ourselves on a day-to-day?
I think, yeah, I mean, to diagnose, like looking at the different kinds of feedback too. Let me just get into it just a little bit. You're looking at externally referenced feedback versus internally referenced feedback. So externally referenced feedback is things that measurements outside of, like measurements that are based on the results of your actions. We'll call that external reference. Internal reference are feelings, emotion, thoughts that you gather like internally, and like what this might look like in a day. Like this, so like an externally referenced day in feedback might look at activities. Like for instance, like did you exercise today? Did you drink water? Did you do the revenue generating activities? Did you do the your key performance activities? Did you do mindfulness, self-care activities? Like it's all based on, did you do the action, and then what was the results? Like how many X leads did you get? You know what I mean? Like you just, all external stuff, which is useful. Internal feedback looks more like, did you push yourself as hard as you could today? How many hours were you on point? How, like what, that internal world, like, what was your, how well were you able to hang on to the perspective, like your most empowered perspective? How many times did you mindfully tap into gratitude? So it's all that, like, how much effort did you put into this today becomes an internally referenced feedback. And it's really helpful to have both and to be able to know like which kind of feedback you're leaning into, which kind of feedback you want to use to like determine like how good your day went. Because there are days that are super hard, but I know I am pushing as hard as I possibly can. And I know with confidence that since I've turned off infinite scroll in my life, I am pushing as hard as I possibly can. So if I fail, I know that I have tried my very best and I still have failed. That's a tough narrative to swallow. That is not, that is playing with fire. But what I find is that even if it fails, even if it's hard, even if it's there, there's always another like step that just seems like, okay, this is the next one. This is the next one to do. Like even in this space. So scary, yes. Does it take a ton of discipline? Yeah. But do I do it because I believe in the larger purpose and mission of everything that we're doing here? Absolutely. And when, we get negative external feedback, can you use that to fuel yourself to live even more excellently? And that's the question. I feel like that's the question. Like, like you're locked in, you're in it. Are you willing to go all in to make this thing happen for the sake of not just you, but for the sake of your larger community? That's what I'm playing with. And the people I've seen do that, it's really fun. It's a really lovely, fun place to live life from.
Thank you, John. And in this, I mean, Ashley and I were talking about some of this last week. We were talking about managing your energy versus time, that internal feedback as well. So if anyone's interested, listen to that from last week. It's kind of, John never knows, but we always circle around and it kind of connects and we build off of these things, don't we, John?
Raj, it's amazing. You create an amazing, lovely space for these questions. Let me just riff and do my thing and process like some of the stuff that I've been really with, processing. One, just to put a very specific bow on this and like where I see this going and like what I've been playing with too, is this idea that the quality of the questions that we ask ourselves internally determine the quality of our life. Meaning that a lot of times people ask questions like, what's wrong with me? Or why can't I do this? Or why is it not working? Those are low quality questions that force your mind to come up with answers that don't really need to be, it's sometimes useful to look at that, but only like sometimes. The other questions that are more useful are like, what am I learning right now about myself? How can I gather more useful feedback? What am I grateful for? Like those kind of questions lead to a different kind of answer, different kind of quality of life. So that's what I've been playing with a lot lately is, okay, so what are the questions we're asking ourselves and how do we do this? I think there's a lot behind that. And if I were to put a book together, I think that would be the topic of the next book.
Beautiful. And I would buy that book. So
hopefully I would too. Yeah, hopefully, if I if I could do it, I don't know. I don't know if I have that in me with everything going on, but it's something I care a lot about is this internal question quality. And trying to think about even, so I feel like that's a good end spot. Thank you, Raj. Your questions are lovely. The energy you create is amazing. And I really appreciate this space and opportunity.
Thank you, John.
To do my thing.
Thank you. I'm going to take those words with me. The quality of the questions you ask yourself determine the quality of your life. And we will look out for John's bot. And if you have any questions, please send them to us.
I have one for the community too. Like,
please.
Lauren, this is the right one. Is like, I've been playing lately with how could you measure internal question quality? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is it, and there's no right or wrong. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer with this, but I would be really curious. So let's leave that as the open question to the community. For us.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll see you soon. Bye.